o marang moula mayap aungil madangali arngula bela
malungil sil silmora kmiroguin mas ilme el alto tam gduk mot magaram lidiul aringia leakl to govet slokyarelang amraringia adiagudngali digang aringia to govet el klum lobang maldatal mergid magmum sateal. Good day and greetings to all those who are able to be with us this morning. This morning we have a special guest with a special message. I don't know him. I don't know what his message is going to convey to us, but I know it's going to be different. So I'll give him a chance to introduce himself. As we in our country, when we speak in public, we have to know who you are.
Yes.
Why are you here? Are you here as a friend or as a foe? And are you going to convey a good message of peace or message of war? So I'll give you a chance.
First of all, thank you so much for hosting me today with you. It's really a pleasure to be on this amazing paradise. A little piece of paradise. I've been here for a week now in Palau. I'm enjoying it. I have traveled most of the world, but I don't think that I've seen a place as beautiful as this. Beautiful people also, so kind and so lovely, and I'm appreciating every interaction I'm having here with the people of Palau. So first of all, it's really a pleasure being here. I am KHALED ELSHERBINI. I know my name is a bit tough for you here, but ELSHERBINI. I'm originally a professor of mechanical and aerospace engineering. I was one of the founders of the Egyptian Space Agency. That's where I got to know I went to Ukraine for a while, and that's where I got to know my beautiful wife, Natasha, who is now my partner in our academy that we have built together. I worked in space sciences for a while, in renewable energy. I was the lead engineer and scientist in wind energy and solar energy in Egypt for a while. But then around 10 years ago, I had this huge transformation. I say that while I was very successful on the outside,
You made a lot of money.
made a lot of money, had all the positions. I even ran as the science advisor of one of our presidential candidates. I was a lead research and development scientist in Egypt. I was very well known. And I have a lovely family, I have a wife, I have kids, but I always knew there was something calling. There was a message inside. At that time, I thought it's only me, but then later I understood every human has this voice inside that's telling them, there is more than this. There is more than this. What is it? And it's around 10 years ago that I had this transformation into the inner world. You know, we keep looking, I have lots of what I call basic principles. And I say we look outside for what we can only find inside. And I had this shift to the inside, to look and understand, know thyself, know the human being, know yourself, know your God, know your universe, know your world. It's all inside. The outside, the more we get outside, actually the tighter it becomes. The more we look inside, the more vast it becomes. There's a whole universe inside us.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's what took me into integral consciousness, psychology. I discovered a fascinating model called the Enneagram. Ennea, meaning 9, gram, meaning figure. So the 9-pointed figure that describes the human pains, the human sufferings, the human fixations. It also describes our meaning, our purpose, our reason for being. I discovered a beautiful philosophical model called the integral consciousness, which talks about how we can grow cognitively, how we can grow spiritually, how we can grow physically. And I actually, with my knowledge and abilities, the gift that I have, I combine these into our own models. So I have stages of the mind growing up, stages of the heart waking up. So that became my mission.
At what stage in your life or what age did you come to this realization? Is it from praying, from meditating, or from what? You know,
so
how did you...
My whole life I've been a seeker. I always say the outer world, the science, was in front of me. Philosophy and psychology was behind me. It was around age 40 that I shifted, that I couldn't take this split anymore, and integration had to happen. So from 40 to 45 was this emergence of a new consciousness, this waking up process.
Wow.
And
at that time you were still in Egypt.
I was still in Egypt. I actually used to go to, when it really became tough, for a year and a half, I would go into the mountains of Sinai, Mount Sinai, and meditate there, and just read and contemplate and walk in the mountains. I would go back to my family and then go again to the mountain, for a year and a half. And this is really the year and a half where an aha happened. It's like, I'm understanding what's going on here now. I came back to my wife. We established what we called the Consciousness Academy. I told her, she always reminds me, it was something very small. It was a room like this with a little TV. And I told her, I think we're starting something very big here. 10 years later, we have thousands of students in the academy. We graduate 125 students every year. We have 4-year program of waking up, cleaning up. In just 10 years, we have a large community in the Middle East, and now it's becoming international. We give our courses in English and Arabic. Wow. It's like we have had this big effect because it's coming from the heart. When people tell me, what's the secret? I tell them, because I never meant to teach. I meant to work on myself and help the people around me.
I look at you. You look like Arab, like
yes.
Middle Eastern.
Yeah.
And so let me ask you this question, because we Palawans always look. Where did you come from? What's your bloodline? What's your DNA? Are you come from that generation of the pharaohs? In the history, or you're Arab mix? Or?
No, so my parents are both Egyptians. My grandparents are all Egyptians. So, but most Egyptians will have mixed blood when you go several generations back. I mean, we have been a mix of all the cultures around. But I'm a pure Egyptian in raising up. Yet I got a chance as a child to live in many countries. I lived in the United Kingdom for a while. I lived in Syria for a while, and I lived in the US for 6 years. And then in the last years, I've been able to travel a lot. So I consider myself now a citizen of the world. Wow. More and more breaking out of the ties, the limited ties of ethnocentricity into what we call world-centric, human-centric. And I like to always talk about being human-centric, much wider than being stuck in a small identification.
Oh, interesting. So you found this academy, and it grew up from small room in your house to a big institution.
Yes, and so actually all our work since COVID has become online, and that has helped us become international. So since 2020, we now give the courses in Arabic and English, and worldwide. So we have students from all over the world now.
And you do it from Egypt? From Egypt.
Everything from Egypt. And that's why when I travel, I always like to help wherever I go, especially when I find that the younger generation, especially, I call them the broken generation. The broken generation.
That's true for a 74-year-old with 14 children and 18 grandchildren and watching them grow.
God bless them all for you. May they all be blessed for you. Yeah. I have 6 children. I have 6 children. I don't have any grandchildren yet.
Yeah.
So the broken generation, I call them that because they're growing up in this connected world makes them cognitively ahead of their seniors, ahead of their parents and their grandparents. Their complexity in thinking is way ahead of their parents. Yet their level of wisdom is not like their parents. And their parents don't understand them. Their parents cannot mentor them. They don't find someone to take their hand. On the contrary, they are always told, you are bad. your generation is bad, you're not good. And the kids understand themselves from what they are told. Every child wants to be loved and appreciated and accepted by the parents. So they see a world we do not see, and they don't understand themselves. They start hating themselves. They start hurting themselves. That's why I call them broken. They need mentors. They need people to talk to them in their language, in their complexity.
But, the reason why I came a little bit later, it took us so much time to wake up our grandchildren. One is 11 and one is 8, and it's just a struggle. And I said, I said, when I was young, you have to wake up like at 6. If not, my father put water and pour it on me. And so I'm thinking, I said, I'm going to do this to you, but I cannot do it in a bed, It's going to get wet. Whereas before it was just a bamboo floor so the water can seep down,
So I always like to ask the question, why?
But is that the situation you see in your country, in Arab countries, in Middle East countries, which are very conservative and religious? Yeah.
So it depends really on the status you're talking about, the level. If we talk about just 3 groups in modern society, the traditional, pre-modern we call it, which still live the family life and the traditional life, the modern who have gone into corporate and money and success and career, and the postmodern, which have started to think in a humanistic collective way. If we break people down into these 3 and look at their children, you'll find their children very different.
How do you break down your society, Egypt? Is it conservative? Is it
today? Today it is mostly in the pre-modern, with a large group in the modern and a very slim layer moving into the postmodern. In the West, when you look in the West today, you find that the postmodern is getting larger, the modern is the majority, and there is still part that is pre-modern. So there are statistics for all of this. It depends on the region and where you are, and of course life conditions. So again, I always, as I said, like to ask not what, but why. And it's really about life conditions. What are people struggling for?
And what does your academy focus? Which sector in the society?
So my whole work is about helping people move upwards a little bit by understanding why they are acting as they're acting. When you are threatened in your daily food and daily survival and daily threat, and you're barely catching up with your expenses, you cannot think growth.
Yes.
You cannot think growth. When you have your basics, all your basics, now you can think in a growth mentality. That's the modern mentality. When you have affluence, a lot, now you can afford to think in a post-transpersonal, post-ethnic mentality.
But that's minority in every society.
Exactly.
That's
but
minority.
it's getting bigger and bigger. It's getting bigger and bigger. We're starting to see nations that have really started to create success models, like the Northern European countries.
Yes.
So we have models to look up to. But we have so many problems down on our psychological and political levels that are not letting people equally distribute and live a humane, decent life. If we can make people see the pain in other humans, see humans as humans, not as objects, not as barriers. We need to go beyond the ethnicity and the individuality to humanity.
That's tough.
We have to start. We have to start working on it.
So in your experience, now you're dealing with, you've gone online, so you're dealing with other countries. Like, let's take our case, for example. We come from a small island, literally a dot in the map. You cannot find it, and we evolved for thousands of years here. At least our history, we study. We go like 4,000 years, more than Christ, before Christ was born.
Yeah.
So, but it's so small, and then it was closely, related unity in each island or villages. And all of a sudden, we're thrust into this modern society. Yeah. The Americans defeated the Japanese, came here, and first the Germans came and influenced us for 15 years. They were gone. The Japanese came, imposed us their very regimented, kind of life, and we learned to work very hard because the Japanese really made us work. But we were just easygoing people. You go to the beach, you drink coconut, and you get the fruits. It was an easy life. I mean, you can literally be naked and survive. The weather was okay and stuff like that. There was lots of fish. But then fast forward up to now. So we all of a sudden become independent. We are taught of American freedom, democracy, the right to vote, the right to express yourself. And especially like this program and myself, for example, I advocate, freedom of expression, the right to know your government, to know your leaders, to tell them, because they represent you. You elect them. They should, do for you. They should serve you. But we also have a situation that's emerging where the gap between the haves and the have-nots is getting wider.
It's getting bigger. Yeah.
So if I were to tell you, I kind of did study. Maybe we have like 5% of the Palau population are their earnings is like 50,000 or over. Businessmen, congressmen, and the rest is down there like $15,000 a year salary versus like 50,000 or over, and it's getting wider. Yeah. And the rich are getting richer, and the poor are getting poorer right now. So I mean, I see it. It's like seeing a mushroom small growing.
Yeah.
And then we see corruption. And we see all this like abuse of power and stuff like that. Then we go to church. I'm Catholic, so they tell us every Sunday they, harangue us and they give sermons, and so and at our age, I'm 74 years old. You have the luxury of able to look back at your life, look at your society, look at your culture. I'm a traditional chief, small chief, lower chief, but I have kind of a lot of experience in life. And now I look back and I said, wow. And I can say I'm lost as to how to deal, especially with these young generations, my children, my grandchildren, who like day and night thinking. Yeah. And so, I mean, this is a kind of a dilemma that we find ourselves in. Yes. We have to deal with our customs, and we have a lot of cultural demands on the young people, and many of our people are just getting on the flight and fly to U.S. and live there. Yeah. Because they just cannot cope with the pressures and all that stuff here.
And what you're talking about is a large issue that has faced not just your nation. It has faced your nation uniquely, but it has faced many nations in different ways. And we need to understand it from two perspectives, in my opinion. First of all, the historical collective. What happened and what led to where we are today? Blaming and pointing fingers and it doesn't help. It's just at least understanding how did these changes bring us to where we are today, and then understanding the levels of human cognitive development and the pressures on each level. So personally, a few years ago, I read an amazing book that made me understand as an outsider, some of the pressures that your nation and many similar nations faced. It's a book by Jared Diamond. If I remember the name right, it was Germs, Steel, and something. I'll get the name. Yeah. So I always mess up the name. So Germs, Steel, and anyway, it's a lovely book. It's talking about how different societies developed in different speeds due to resources. You're a small island, as you're saying, relaxed. You have the resources on the island. You can't be expected to develop beyond that without the resources on the island that can help you. Not like in the main island, not like in China, not like in Egypt, not like in India, not like in Europe, where everything was connected. And then also when the contact happened, many diseases spread that killed so many of the indigenous societies of their locations. And suddenly, people were asked to develop in a few years to levels of life conditions that took thousands of years for other nations. So after 5, 7, 10,000 years of development in China, in the US, in Europe, etc., you suddenly come here and now in one generation, you have to catch up. And that puts too much stress on the culture, on the collective, and on the individuals. Now, the elders who saw this change happen have this conflict, but at least can understand what's happening. But children grow up and they don't understand what's going on. Why are we like this? Why are they like this? Why are they ahead? Why are we down? And this really crushes their psychology. So just by making them understand the situation, the conditions, culturally, historically, geographically, resources-wise, complexity-wise, and understanding that their connectivity with the internet puts them in a high complexity, low wisdom, as I say. This situation is very tough on them. And this is the only way we can heal these societies that are really struggling, by putting all of this into context. It's not that anyone is better than anyone, but the situations allowed people to progress while others were stuck.
But you know, in our society, it's the family that where the education start. Actually, the father and the mother, and then the uncles and the aunties, and we used to live together. Plenty of us together.
Yeah.
And so kids grew up listening and watching the elders and their parents. So you get to suck in many things that they didn't teach you formally. Say, okay, in the classroom, say this is, but we learn it. So we have certain values. We are all society, so we really have set values of who we are. What are the right or wrong, the things that you should do. And our society is, if you're a kid, you act and behave as a kid. There are certain standards that you have to, and then you move up to teenage, and then you young men, young women, and up to marriage. I mean, it's like a very set.
Yes.
Right now, it's
but
totally,
modern consciousness lives in a different way.
Yes.
And that's why they will be questioning. They will tell you why. You have to wake up. Why? You need to go to school. Why? That's the complexity. In the simpler societies and simpler abilities, we just follow. Look at a child growing up. They pass through all these stages. They pass on the stage where they're totally dependent on their mother. It's like when the tribes were totally dependent on nature. They have no choice. And then the child becomes obedient to the parents. And then the child goes, no.
Yes.
No. And then the child becomes loving of their parents. And then the child wants to leave their parents. And then the child wants to come back to their parents. When you look at human history and human society, it's like this child growing up. And we need to understand the culture is at which level of human growth. Are they in the time of, no, that's warriors and empires and fighters and heroes and villains? Are at the time of Mama, Papa, I love you. This is the time of listening, being good citizens, being good family people, raising good families? Is it the time of Mama, Papa, bye, I want to leave the house? This is what we call the modern time. I have to have a career. I have to have my own way. I have to find my...
Yes.
And after that, Papa, Mama grew old. I didn't find anything outside. I wish I could go back home to them. Why didn't I stay with them enough when they were young? This is again coming back to this humanistic. So you see, it's humans grow up, societies grow up.
Brother, you are a professor. You should stay in Palau. We have this program every morning for 1 week before you go. Okay.
It would be my pleasure. It would have been my pleasure. Maybe another time.
Yeah. So then you came to Palau.
Yeah.
Well, how did you find out about this place? Why here? And when did you come? And what have you seen?
So first of all, I got to know about Palau from my lovely friend Adeline.
Oh, okay.
Edie, I met her a few months ago, and we became good friends. And she invited me over, come over, and I have always had interest in discovery of new cultures, discovery of new. I like to know humans and figure out how their life looks like and how their environment and their conditions have made them who they are. So once she invited me, I immediately told her, and I will come. I would love to come. I have read a lot about Micronesia and the area, but just to come is like a dream. And I'm very happy the dream came true because it has been the most beautiful week.
And so how long are you going to be here?
I'm leaving Saturday.
Oh,
in 2
boy.
days. Yeah.
Okay. So this program of yours, this academy, how, you look and you act and you sound like a professor. I mean, or let's say a wise man, Middle East wise man. No wonder you from the Middle East you create 3 major world religions. So I'm curious. I'm Catholic, and I read and I heard about the Coptic Christians in Egypt. Exactly. I understand they are mistreated as a minority. They're killed and stuff like that.
Look, Egyptians, for all history, have been very peaceful people. And our Coptic brothers and sisters have always been part of the society. I grew up in a house where all my neighbors were actually Coptic. It was owned by Coptic priests. Where did they come from?
Did they start there, or how they...
Well, Egypt has a very rich history. And Alexandria, which was a Greek-Roman city by Alexander the Great. By the 3rd century, when the Roman Empire became a Christian empire, it spread Christianity to all its areas, and Christianity moved into Egypt as well as Arabia and the Middle East. That's in the 3rd century. And then, the great split that happened between the Byzantium in the east and the Roman Empire and the Catholic Church in the west, which created the Orthodox Church. And Egypt became part of the Orthodox Church. And then the Orthodox Church itself, now there is Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, and Egyptian Orthodox, and these are the Copts. And then Islam came in the 7th century. And
so Islam is new in Egypt.
Islam appeared in the 7th century, and it immediately one of the first places it moved into was Egypt because it was just across Arabia. So between people of Egypt converting to Islam, between people moving into Egypt, then you had this mix of Muslims and Christians. And to a great extent, they have lived peacefully all of history. And even today, we have very peaceful living with them. So
how many people are they?
About 10%.
Which translate to how many million?
About 10 million.
Oh, that's large.
Yeah, it's a large community. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. They are a core part of the society. So, are they mistreated? Definitely there is mistreatment. Again, when you have a minority and a majority, then usually the majority is living regularly and the minority wants to prove itself. From time to time, there would be mistreatments. I cannot speak for them. They would have to speak for themselves. But personally, we deal with them as, again, brothers and sisters. It's like no differences. In our academy, we have many Copts, and they're almost welcome. We have always made our programs, as I said, human-centric. So we have had from everywhere in the world. We've had Hindus, we have Buddhists, so let alone Christians and Copts, because we're talking psychology, we're talking humanistic. It's not about religion. We use religious metaphors because some societies are religious, like Egypt. So we can use religious texts. Depending on where we're talking, we use examples and quotes from the culture, because at the end, what did the religions want from all of us but to be good human beings? That's what religions ask us to be. To look inside, give our role. I say religions have three main roles: connection with your fellow human beings, connection with your source, and connection with yourself. These are the three tasks of religions. Now, every religion might have focused, depending on the people interpreting it, have focused on one of these three aspects more than the other. This is how you behave. That is one side. This is how you know yourself. Or this is how you know God. If you take this and this as your savior, or as your God, or as your belief, then you are saved. Again, this is one of the three. So connection to the source, the Lord, the Creator, where we came from. Connection to yourself, knowing your needs, your desires, your pains, and your purpose, and your meaning, and your powers, and your gifts, and being a good human being with your society, with your family, with your friends, with all humans.
What's your religion?
I'm a Muslim.
Muslim. Yeah. Okay, well, as you know, Christians are celebrating, especially Catholics are celebrating Christmas.
Christmas, yes.
In a few days.
Yes.
I guess you're leaving us before Christmas.
And the Orthodox celebrated, by the way, on the 7th of January.
Yeah. Well, give me your perspective and your knowledge of... there's a debate I just read before I came here about that this Christmas is actually a pagan religious occasion. It was adopted. What's your perspective of Christmas? And I mean, there's argument that Christ was not born on the 25th of December. He was born late in January. Or what's your since you come from the area that Christ came from?
So let's say, first of all, that's not my area of expertise. I can let the experts talk. And being on a show, I'm supposed to answer, but I could easily say you can ask someone else. But I'm a curious person. So this is not an expert answer. This is a curiosity answer. My understanding is that historical documents from several sources say that Jesus was most probably born in late summer. Jesus the human, Jesus the person, Jesus the child was born in late summer. As Christianity moved into Europe, and again, this is not an expert answer. You could refute it. I'm again talking as a curious person who has read a lot. As Christianity moved into Europe, it started meeting with lots of pagan groups in Europe. And in these pagan groups, all of them had huge celebrations in the middle of winter. Because winter was a season of death. Winter was very cold. Many of them would wrap up at the start of winter and only unwrap at the late winter. And there was always this celebration in the middle of winter. It's as if a celebration to the gods asking for life. And the early Christians said, why not? We want to celebrate the Savior, God, and we want to celebrate life. Let's make them love the religion, love this new message that is coming to them by bringing it closer to their practices. So historically, I'm not talking religiously, historically, that is the, let's say, most agreed upon story. How true is it? You have to go to the experts.
Okay.
Yeah.
I went to school in Israel, and there's a professor who gave us a lecture for 2 hours. And he asked, there's 76 of us, members of parliament all over the world. Any question? I raised my hand and I said, why did the Jews kill Christ, the Son of God? Boy, took 3 hours to relate the history
And you're
oh,
saying
boy.
that in Israel.
Yeah, in Israel. Oh boy! So I stopped my questioning at that. So anyway, so where does your academy and your so where do you fit? I mean, you have 3 religions from your area, major religion. The world now is getting so kind of divided into conservative, liberals, and all that, and then even the churches, all this. Your academy comes in. How do you fit in this area? You know?
Again, we talk to the human beyond all these labels. If you uncover these labels, you will find the same human under all these labels. We all have the same pains. We all have the same fears. We all have the same existential gap. We all have the same calling. When we're not aware, we try to solve it by becoming defensive or attacking. But when we wake up, I realize that we're different, but we're the same. And that I am because you are, and you are because I am, and that we're just cells in a body. And if one cell is in pain, the whole body is suffering.
I guess our blood is the same. They're all red.
We're all the same. It's just take a little layer off. We're all the same. Take off the labels. We're all the same. Even if you're asking, for example, about religions, when you look at why we follow religions, you will find it's because we're trying to heal the pain inside. We're trying to understand what's going to happen. We have this existential threat. We're going to die. What's going to happen when we die? We want to be good people. Every human being is like that. Everyone wants to be a good person. Everyone wants to secure the future. Everyone wants to take care of the family. Everyone wants to know what's going to happen when I die. And we seek these answers. And as we grow, we become more and more expansive in understanding these messages. We don't take them tight. At one level, for me to be right, you have to be wrong. And then in another level, maybe I have a little piece of right and you have a little piece of right. And then beyond that, it's not about right and wrong. It's about peace. It's about feeling the joy of waking up and looking into the sky and looking into the nature and saying, wow, this is a gift. This is the treasure, just to be alive and to be with other live human beings. See, again, this developmental, psychological and transpersonal process.
But I guess if you wake up hungry and you don't have food,
you can't.
Yeah, and then
you can't.
You have to concentrate just to struggle to survive.
Exactly.
Yeah. You cannot think of any other thing.
And if I am barely surviving, this is it. If I don't eat it, I die. And you come and try to take it from me. What will I do to you?
Kill.
Exactly. And when I do that, am I a bad person? Am I a good person? Or am I just a person trying to survive?
Wow. Wow. We can sit here for hours and hours. And I love this discussion. You know, I always, our elders or our generation, we usually sit in one place every day and then we exchange ideas and like this. And it's important, you know, but I see you have white, hair and white beard. And so the role of people of our generation, we've done a lot in in our own countries, but we are weak now, and we really have nothing to offer in terms of physical contribution, but also in our brain, and what message or what should we do as a part of any society
the most beautiful message I would borrow from the great poet Khalil
yes.
Gibran, when in his lovely book The Prophet, he wrote about on children, and he talks to the elders and he tells them these children are the children of life. They're not your children. They're life's children that you just come through you, come from you, but they are not yours. I always say to the people when they start complaining about the younger generation, don't complain. And if you complain, then you are guilty, not the children. The children are just the product of the culture and the conditions they grew up in, which, if you want to blame someone, you are the reason of, not them. So you better not complain.
Yeah, we have a caller.
Okay,
so,
yes.
Caller on the air.
Oi, ito talaga ang ilmang kau mga galges tigit. Yan ako rin singing tigit proper ang kafetra Muslim. And the boy tiagi labai so alo ringin alwa say life is a funny. We came with a nothing, and when we fight for everything, later, we leave everything and go with nothing. Do not hate anything, because life is a nothing. That's the end of your life in this world. The problem is this: how can you resolve between the Islamists and the Jewish in the Middle East? Thank you very much.
I guess he start.
Wow.
We came naked, and we go out naked.
Yeah.
But then he switched to the Middle East. So
There was a big twist at the end of the question. So let me first, before going to the Middle East, say that yes, we come with nothing, but it is not true that we leave with nothing. We leave with memories. We leave with hearts that we have touched in our life. We leave with a different world than the one we came from. We don't leave with nothing. So you should always ask, what are you leaving with? This is between the first breath and the last breath. This is your mission. This is your role. And with every word, with every action, with every movement, you cause ripples that change the entire world. Ali, one of the wise people of Islam, said that you think that you are very small, but within you is the entire universe. And today quantum mechanics tells us about this connection between everything. Everything changes. So I like always to correct that belief. No, we don't leave with nothing. We leave when we have changed the world. But how have we changed it? What have we left behind us? And from that, I will transition again to the Middle East. Now, the Middle East is not a simple problem. It's not a complicated problem. It's a very complex problem. If it was simple or complicated, someone would have solved it a long time ago. It is so many needs and desires, so many human egos and human existential threats that are acting in a way that is expounding the problem, because we're not going again to the root of it. The root of it is humans trying to survive, and you cannot ask humans to live from conditions beyond the conditions that they are allowed to live in. As we were just saying, if you are threatening people in their daily livelihood, then what do you expect from them to do? And threatening them more will just expound the problem more. It is about understanding the human conditions of all. I am talking about all humans. Understanding their conditions, understanding what's happening to them, giving them a decent, dignified way of life, and then asking them for rights and responsibilities equal to that level of life. But when you have ethnic cleansing, then you are creating people who will call back and come back with what you label as terrorism and what I would label as trying to survive and not die. So it's a very complex problem, and it needs us all to think in a human way Not in a Muslim or a Christian or a Jewish or an Israeli or a Palestinian or an Egyptian or a rich or a poor or a terrorist or a peaceful. No. In a human way. Understand that every human is trying to survive. There are levels of survival, and we have to satisfy the minimum required level to start asking people for responsibilities.
That's, but when you look at the situation in the Middle East, it's actually very basic. People trying to survive.
Try to survive, yeah.
And it's a fight over land, like what we do here, over power, over authority, and who's control whom and what resources. So it's even here. We even have fights in our own clans, in our own village, in our own states. So
because, as I said, from a psychological perspective, we look outside for what we can only find inside. So if I feel something is missing, I try to have power over you. Something is missing, I try to have more money. Something is missing, I try to have control. But at the end, it's still missing. I haven't solved the problem. And that's when we start killing each other and fighting with each other. But when I realize, you're only doing that because you're afraid. Okay, come, I will ease your fear. Don't worry. Let's be brothers. Then I will stop. Why should I fight? Most human beings, and this is a claim I will claim, I rarely put generalistic claims, but this is a general claim. Most human beings, over 99% of human beings, want a house, a job, feel safety, feel dignified, and you will never get any violence from them. Give them clean streets, give them roads they can drive on, give them something to transport them, give them a house, and give them a job. And they will not cause any problem. Most human beings everywhere in the world, that's all we need. We have come, as you said, as the caller said very beautifully, we came with nothing. We want to spend these beautiful years that we're on life, give our mission, and leave with nothing. But we have to have the conditions for that.
Well, brother, we're coming to an end of our program, so you have given us the whole universe to look at. And I'm thinking, my mind is going somersault, So you're given a few minutes to kind of summarize your presentation and so at least our listeners and we can go after listening to you that we gain something, because when we Palans say, when our foreigners come, we welcome our guests and we make them part of our families and our clans and stuff like that. And then so we want to see you come as a guest, as friend. What are you going to live with us?
Look within. And look within is primordial wisdom that every elder has told the young, but most of them didn't tell them how to look within. And I advise going in a process. This is how I give it in my academy. First of all, know who you are, personality. Then go to why are you like that, psychology. Then go into who are you meant to be, what is your purpose. I call it transformation. Then the bigger picture, the transpersonal, the source, the spiritual. We all try to go to the spiritual. We call it spiritual bypass. We try to go to the spiritual immediately and forego all this process, because the spiritual sounds the easiest. You just go to the mosque or go to church and you just pray and you are saved. It doesn't work like that. To be saved, you have to be saved from within. Who am I? Why am I like this? What am I meant to be? And what is the bigger purpose and meaning from where I came? Take it like that. Take it slowly. That's how we follow with the people. And people have a huge transformation in their lives. Don't ask the others in your life to change. Ask yourself to change. And when you seriously, really change from the heart, they will change. Don't blame anyone. Just ask yourself, what am I supposed to do? Who am I supposed to be?
Wow. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank
Those
you.
are words of wisdom that we have listened to. We hope you come back. And then, I guess with your friend Eddie here, we're probably going to have a branch of your academy in Palau if online, you know.
It would be my pleasure. It's really been a pleasure being in Palau and being a pleasure being with you. And thank you so much for hosting me. I really enjoyed this with you. Thank you so much. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
eo marang mola mayop au mil madanali armul belau isay yaul akmul mogon ar other belau